All right, next up we have Kenny Rausch. Kenny was my right-hand man at USA Hockey. I think he was the third person that I hired in our youth hockey department when we made a commitment to hire regional managers. He played NCAA Division I hockey at Boston University, and he was actually teammates with a couple of guys that are at the Belfast Giants right now. Steve Thornton and Shane Johnson were teammates when they won a national championship. So if you know those guys, you want some dirt on those guys, Kenny's more than willing to share. But he played at Boston University. He coached college hockey for 13 years. He worked in our national player development camps. We could tell stories all day about that, sleeping in dorm rooms, unair-conditioned dorm rooms that were temperatures like yesterday, that had no air conditioning, whatnot. He would work 2 or 3 camps a summer, working with our best 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. He was involved in Massachusetts player development programs. And then I hired him at USA Hockey. Actually, when we came up with the idea of our American development model, we were pretty tentative, as Steve alluded to. And I actually flew around the country, went to the hockey hotbeds, and I kind of snuck in, and I called a few respected hockey guys and had one-on-one meetings and said, what do you guys think? Are we going to get shot? Are we going to get just machine gunned down? Because we're asking for real change, dramatic change. Significant change at the little kid level, and then very significant change at the older kid level. So we wanted to get some feedback and know where those daggers were going to come from and what they thought the pushback might be. So we started to try to create a little bit of consensus and some responses to those concerns, and he was one of the confidants. And so from that, we hired him at USA Hockey. He was the director of youth hockey, oversaw with me a lot of the national championships and the player development camps. He was also the GM of our under-17 team for a number of years. So with that, I asked him to come here today. He doesn't work at USA Hockey anymore. He's the vice president of RinkNet, which is a scouting software that all the NHL teams, the NCAA teams use, several of the top hockey federations use, and we have signed up to use that too, so that we track our players in every birth year, so that when we do start to select under 18 teams, under 20 senior teams on the men's and women's side, we have a database where we've tracked those players from, say, 15 years old, so they don't fall through the cracks. We can also help put together individual player development plans for those players, and we can see which way that they're trending and keep track of them, so that when we do get to the point where we're having regular training camps for those age groups, we'll have an evaluation from a multitude of coaches and evaluators, our staff, but then also team coaches, and we'll use video with that, combined with that too, so that we have a good track, a good finger on our players as they go through those teenage years that Steve talked about, where you see such significant changes in them as their growth, their personalities, their behavior, all those things. We want to do as good a job as we possibly can, so that we know our player pool, and we're very, very familiar with our player pool, and we can't afford to have anybody fall through the cracks. So, and I know players start to disperse and go all over the place, all over the globe to play. So we want to keep them in our system and keep track of them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kenny.
I'm a former coach, so I don't use a microphone, and I walk around a lot. All right, so
but Kenny, you're supposed to stay up here a little bit for the cameras.
Okay.
I'm the head coach.
Where's my boundary? But I will wander around a little bit, but I appreciate Kevin having me over here and the ability to speak in front of you. I was telling Kevin last night and a couple of the other attendees that I spoke to,
important in a lot of ways. First of all, from a basketball sense, for just their skill development and stuff, that's going to start at a very young age and is going to be determined at a very young age. And quite frankly, you know, if you look around, we're failing pretty badly in this country as a whole in teaching people basketball skills. And you all notice it that watch the NBA, because there's a huge difference in just the skill level of the players coming from Europe and what we have here in terms of their ability to pass the ball and shoot the ball. We can't even produce enough people who can do those things here, that we got to go across and try to find people who can do them. We're not developing skills here. One of the reasons is, okay, we are much more interested in playing games and winning and losing at a young age than we are in skill development. So I would say this to all of the youth coaches here, even more than the high school coaches, is you have to make a decision if you want to teach the kids that you're coaching how to play basketball, or if you just want to win games, because there's a big difference. I last spring coached both my 12-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old son for 2 months in a YMCA league and had a group of kids. And I got to see every approach, okay? And I would say to you, of the probably 18 teams that I saw just in that limited time, there were maybe 2 or 3 coaches that were really trying to teach skills, and everybody else was just trying to win a game. Leave your best players on the court as long as you can. Play zone defense, for God's sakes. It was beyond me. In a 9-year-old league, play zone defense, okay, for the entire game. Obviously, don't ever let your biggest kids dribble the ball. Make sure they always give it to a guard, who is usually your son, okay? And so they can run up the court. And then you wonder why at the high school level we got so many kids who can't play, and we never have a 6'5", 6'6", 6'8" kid who can dribble, pass, and shoot, because at the young age, you tell him to go stand under the basket and get the rebound and give it to somebody else. So the first thing I would say to you, you have a decision to make. Do you want to help build basketball players, or do you want to just tell everybody you won your youth league?
Hello? Oh, sorry. So I'm a goalie dad. My son's 8 years old, and he plays inline hockey as well, and his inline hockey coach has vastly different opinions on the size of the net. So at Manchester, we use small nets for the keepers, and inline he uses the big nets. And the two coaches either side are loggerheads over which is right. So you said small nets are better, so shall I say that's an Olympic winning opinion? Should I go with that? Olympic winning opinion that the small nets are better.
Absolutely. Like if you think about it, it's not only worse for your son, the goalie, right? If I'm shooting on a kid in a giant net, it's easier for me to score. I can just shoot it anywhere and it's going to go in. And you get this false sense of goal scoring, or this false sense of competing. It's not even. It's like, you know, it's like little kids playing in a giant soccer net. Yeah, you're going to score a lot of goals. But like that's not the point. Like the point is, if I'm now playing on a smaller net, it's going to make your shooters better.
So I have a question about timings. What do you make of this idea that you should set a starting time for, if it's a skills drill, not a game or something like that, but if you want them to execute a particular skill, that there should be a starting time, but not necessarily a finish time, because if you finish before they've done it properly, they are taking away the message that it's not about acquiring the skill, it's just about spending the time, right? At what age is that appropriate, and at what age is that appropriate?
And I'll ask you this: are you allowed to do that drill only one time a year? So maybe they don't get it right the first time.
So you would say, well, we're going to come back to this.
So
You need to let them know that.
So as another philosophy of ours, of which I don't want to say mine, but ours, is we ran the same practice at least 2 times in a row, every time, right? Because for that reason, you were doing something, and you may be doing this in 8-minute station, and they're fumbling through it for 4 minutes, and it looks like they're just starting to get it at minute 6, and then it's time to go. Well, the next practice they come back, you no longer have to you don't have to explain the drill, right? So you don't have to explain the drill. Hey, remember what we were doing here the other night? Let's do it again. Go, right? So that 8-minute station just went from an actual 6-minute station to actually 8 minutes of development. Now they might fumble through for a minute. Now by minute 2, 3, 4, they're really humming on it. Boom. And that's the other thing. Like people always think I need to make up all these new drills, right? We need to do this because the kids are going to get bored. If it's a fun drill, they're not going to get bored. Right? If it's a fun drill, at the end of that drill, you know what they'll say? Can I go once more? Can I go once more? That's when you know it works. And I think it was Doc who said, or maybe it was Peter who said it this morning, the first thing you should do after every practice is pick 4 or 5 kids. What did you like best? What did you not like best? And why? So if a kid does it, you think, hey, I might think this drill is awesome. Right? I think it's got the 5 elements, it's doing what I want to do. 5 out of 5 kids tell you it sucks. In the garbage.
Rausch, along those lines, we had a saying to embrace the chaos. I know when I was a younger coach, I thought, practice needs to look sharp. It needs to be crisp. It needs to be bang, 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 clean, crisp, everybody completing passes, because I want it to look that way. The parents in the stands, I want to impress like I know what I'm doing, right? But that's not really the game, right? The game is chaotic, and we have to put kids in those positions to where they can solve the problem, solve the chaos, because that's the real hockey game. When you get to a competitive level, the game is chaotic. It's unpredictable. So you've got to be able to read, react, and play within that chaos. That was a huge change in our culture of coaching, is to embrace the chaos. Rausch, talk a little bit about the role of a regional manager and kind of how you approach that being a regional manager, and other regional managers did that. Their relationship with clubs and coaches and regions.
Yeah, I wore a bunch of different hats, but I was the regional manager as well for Alaska, like I said, and the big thing is to get to know, for me, was to get to know who the influential people were, right? And it could have been former pros who played up in there, that stayed up there, kids that played college that moved back, a wealthy guy who's got a kid in the club, who played whatever it may be. Get to know the people who think they matter and make them matter. And the more those people that you can get on your side, you might not get everyone on your side. Right? Like I said, in Anchorage, 2 of the clubs in Anchorage wanted nothing to do with me because they knew better. Because I made it to this bar because I grew up playing left wing with Scotty Gomez and we were really good. Well, if you work out with Scotty Gomez, like, what did I do for you, sir? Like, right? But he didn't believe, this guy would not believe in full ice, cross ice hockey, half ice hockey, any of this stuff. And he goes, well, where else is this happening? And I'd rattle off Finland, Sweden, Norway. He goes, well, that's over Europe, I mean here. And I'm like, well, that's why it's working over here and why we aren't doing well over here. Right? So it's to get to know and create those relationships and try to mend as many fences as possible. Right? That's a big part of it. Make them your friends, right? You can't just go in and hammer them right away. Now, after a while, when you get to know them a little bit better, then you can start giving them the jabs, but you have to get them to trust you and realize that you are trying to do what's best for their kids. Right? Again, it's trying to get them to understand it's for your children, not for you or your parents. And it's a hard message for adults to handle.
How about other questions? Anybody? Comments? Rausch, here we go.
What element in sports psychology with which age groups, what level do you bring that into kids and athletes?
Well, that's more of a Doc question. Here, Doc, he asked, at what level do you start to bring sports psychology into play with developing players? Louder.
I'd say depends what you define as sports psychology. Talking about performance psychology. Otherwise, I'd say from day one, people use psychology for insight. And it's a nice word where everything above the water is what is usually about performance psychology. Stress and all those things. Everything that's below is if you like a platform of life cycle, understanding how to do everything, time management, so it starts from the very first time you come into contact with a kid, and you have to do it in an appropriate way. So things are U7s, for example, will be quite different than you did in your 13s or your 20s or whatever. Psych is just part of the process.
It goes back to human, athlete, sport, right? Because, like I said, some U7s might need something. Like we coached it, when we were coaching, when we got up to the 14U level, we had this one goalie one day was just a basket case. He was awful. Like, literally couldn't catch anything. We were like, what is going on with the body today? Right? So the sports psych piece of it wasn't sports psych, it was life psych. Parents just got divorced. Dad brought his girlfriend to the game for the first time and was standing right behind the net. So Bobby turns around and sees this. Bobby's a mess. So Bobby could no longer play Bobby. So great one. But again, it's about getting to know your kids, right? Realize every kid is that experiment of one. Every kid's gonna need something different along the way, but get to know them as humans first. And you'll start to realize, hey, this kid needs a hug, Eric needs a kick in the butt, right? Whatever, every kid needs a little something different.
But interestingly, this model has some of the sports psychology baked into it because it helps kids understand the importance of winning and losing and being able to, kind of play the game for fun and so on. And that's all part of the psychology that you're trying to create.
So when we coached youth hockey, we never talked about winning and losing, but we did have goal setting. Our goal was to score 7 goals a game. That was our first goal. Score 7 goals a game. I don't care if you give up 8. Kids want to score goals, right? We wanted to score 7 goals a game. And then we were like, well, kids actually get competitive, they want to win. So then we're like, all right, if we give up 2, score 9. Score 7 more than the other team, right? And we took this Bad News Bears group of kids like 4 years in a row, and it was bad hockey, but we wouldn't let them throw the puck away. Couldn't throw the puck away, couldn't ice it, couldn't do this, couldn't do that. Literally every time they stepped on the ice, they were trying to solve a puzzle how to put the puck in the net. And we averaged like 8.5 goals a game every year, and we only gave up like 2 or 3 a game. And that was the year with Bobby. Bobby contributed half the goals we gave up that one game.
Rausch, last question. Can you explain how we tried to track the efficiency and activity levels of practice?
Yeah, we had what we called an activity tracker, and all it was actually, did we get that from the Finns to start? Might have been.
Yeah, I stole it from.
Yeah, we stole a lot of stuff from it, but it's fire business. And be a better fire than the next person. Feel the right stuff. But we would give our parents like an activity tracker. So Callie showed you some of those numbers, right? They wanted kids moving 75% of the time, 50% of spot types and stuff. And we would actually go around, we did club visits to start to try to, again, reel people in gently and be like, hey, let us run a practice, when you run your practice, we'll run a practice as well, and we'll compare numbers. So they would run their practice, and we'd have people sitting in the stands with a stopwatch and a pen and a paper. So every time a kid took a shot, he gets a little mark. Every time he made a pass, he got a little mark. Every time he was moving, the stop clock went. If he was standing in line, it stopped, right? And then we did the same thing with one of our practices, station-based, small area stuff. And I guess you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out, like, our numbers were like 80% better in every category, right? Our practices, kids in an hour practice, our kids would be moving about 40 to 45 minutes in the practice, right? They have a puck on their stick for about 10 minutes in the practice, right? That's 10 times the amount you're going to have in a game. But then you watch one of the old school practices where they're doing flow drills and stuff, right? They might have moved for 20 minutes out of 60. Right? They might have had the puck on their stick for 2 minutes instead of 10. And then like that, now if I actually put these numbers in front of a parent, how's the parent going to argue? Like, yeah, I want that. Right? I want that value, not the other value. We go back to Erica's presentation. Right? That's the value you want. Show them the value of certain things.
Yeah, so Steve talked about you can have an opinion, but you can't argue with the facts. So what we did is we actually did a study at the Salt Lake City Olympics of all the teams, and we would take the best 3 players on every team in every game. And that study's available online. So we measured how much time on ice, how many passes were attempted, how many passes were received, how many shots on goal, how many puck touches in an average game. So that's a 60-minute game with the world's best players. Then a couple months later, we went to our U14 national championships, and we did the exact same study. And then we met Juno Katala from Finland. He had done a study of over 100 practices around Finland. And then we piggybacked on that and went around our country and we didn't tell people we were doing activity trackers. And then we started comparing so that we'd get some pushback on, single team on the ice. You'd see loop and shoot. You'd see the old wagon wheel drill, whatever. And you'd see kids, in a practice. A coach would be at the board talking for 15 minutes. And, the activity of the kids was 15 to 17 minutes in a 60-minute hour. So I know you guys think ice is expensive here, but ice in the U.S., there's places at $600 an hour, $500 an hour, $450 an hour is very commonplace. So we tried to sell the parents and educate the parents on, okay, we have a limited amount of ice time. So let's make it as efficient, let's use it as efficiently as we possibly can. So that was our message to the coaches, that you have to have a practice plan. It needs to be an efficient practice plan. We need to minimize the standing around and maximize the activity. And obviously the more activity that you have and the more touches, the more passes, the more shots, the more skating. And a lot of coaches think it's criticizing their practice, but in reality, as a coach, I liked it because it gave me feedback. There was a great example of one of our model clubs in California. They were getting a lot of their players. They would develop good players, and then they would get them stolen by 2 of the NHL teams that were out there that had the big brand. And what they started doing is parents would walk in the rink. They would give them a clipboard with that activity tracker on it and a pen, and have them just watch their child and calculate the activity levels of each of those categories. And then they'd turn it in, and at the end of practice, their hockey director or whatever would post those stats on their website. And then they would say, if somebody would say, we're being recruited to go to this team or that team, they'd say, okay, before you go to the activity tracker and pick a player in their club and see the level of activity over there versus the level of activity your kid gets here. It's like anything, right? The more reps you get, the more experience you get, the better you're going to be at it. So we'll talk more about that. That's just wanted Rausch to mention that because I think you know, the challenge of having enough ice time is real, and so we just have to focus on being as efficient as we can to use every hour and every minute of those hours, because every minute is money, right? It's real money.
And it's a good lesson for ourselves as well, right? In the U.S., let's just say it's $600 an hour, right? $10 a minute. Just think in terms of every minute that you're speaking and kids aren't doing something on the ice, you're burning $10, $20, $30, $40, $50, right? If I'm a parent, I mean, I want my $50 back, right? So think of it, it's not a bad way to think about it. Think about it in the dollar clock every once in a while, because again, the more you do, the more you maximize results.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rausch.